But folks, let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on the Israel-Iran conflict, riots in America, and all the varying things that are happening in America right now. Folks, this is a momentous a day that will live in infamy, whether we like it or not. This is when Israel, let's just call it what it is. It was a preemptive strike against Iran. Okay, that, like, we can say what we think of it or whatever, but this was a preemptive strike. Let's see, a buddy of mine saying, oh yeah, a reminder that Iran tried to kill the president of the United States. Like, I don't like where we're going with that, where we're trying to find justifications for it. We don't want war. Okay, no American troops on the ground in Iran, as far as I'm concerned. There's no need, no justification for it. And to be frank, we should not have American troops on the ground for this Iran-Israel conflict, just as we shouldn't have any troops on the ground for the Ukraine conflict, even though unfortunately we do. Like, it's mostly special forces and that kind of stuff, and they say, well, it's just for training and just guarding embassies and stuff, but they had to lie about them not being there, and then when they got found out, they had to make up new lies. I mean, that's really what happened. But yeah, to me, no American troops on the ground for either of these conflicts, as far as I'm concerned. There's no reason for us to sacrifice any blood for these. And this is between Israel and Iran and Russia and Ukraine. Okay, like this, it's between them. It's there will be a winner, there will be a loser. And some people say, well, what about, you're just saying they should surrender? There's a difference between surrender and recognition. Okay, always remember that. So unfortunately, we find ourselves in a place where, internationally speaking, all our options are bad ones. And so to me, if you're damned if you do, damned if you don't, this is one where I think you'd be better to be damned if you didn't. Okay, like, it's you didn't do the bad thing that led to the horrible thing. And so I really don't want any further U.S. involvement in this conflict. The people who are trying to call upon more involvement, I'm very skeptical of, because I want peace. Now, keep in mind, in Iran, there's 1 million Christians. In Israel, there's a lot of Christians. So our people are going to be getting bombed. Okay, our fellow Christians will be facing the full might of the military-industrial complex, despite them not very much not being a part of this conflict. Now, I'm going to be making a couple of readings tonight, and it's to remind us, folks, just to remind. This is a reading from the book of Revelations. Revelation 12. And a great sign appeared in heaven, and a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. She was pregnant and was crying out in birth pains and the agony of giving birth. And another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his head 7 diadems. His tail swept down a third of the stars of heaven and cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was about to give birth, so that when she bore her child, he might devour it. She gave birth to a male child, one who is to rule all the nations with a rod of iron. But her child was caught up to God, to his throne. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared by God, in which she is to be nourished for 1,260 days. Now war arose in heaven, Michael and his angels fighting against the dragon. And the dragon and his angels fought back. But he was defeated, and there was no longer any place for them in heaven. And the great dragon was thrown down, the ancient serpent, who is called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. He was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. And I heard a loud voice in heaven saying, now the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Christ have come, for the accuser of our brothers has been thrown down, who accuses them day and night before our God. And they have conquered him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, for they loved not their lives even unto death. Therefore rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them. But woe to you, O earth and sea, for the devil have come down to you in great wrath, because he knows that his time is short. And when the dragon saw that he had been thrown down to earth, he pursued the woman who had given birth to the male child. But the woman was given 2 wings of the great eagle, so that she might fly from the serpent into the wilderness, to the place where she is to be nourished for a time and times and half a time. The serpent poured water like a river out of his mouth after the woman, to sweep her away with a flood. But the earth came to the help of the woman, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed the river that the dragon had poured from his mouth. Then the dragon became furious with the woman and went off to make war with the rest of her offspring, on those who keep the commandments of God and hold the testimony of Jesus. And he stood on the sand of the sea. Thus ends the reading of God's holy word. Um, Bandit goes, as a Trump supporter, I don't like his response to Iran. They're placing the blame for one of the assassinations on Iran. Yeah, like that's a little much. Now, here's the thing, Bandit, not the big public ones that we know about, but like, yeah, Iran's probably, like, if you made me bet, they've probably tried at least a dozen times to assassinate US presidents. So that doesn't really shock me all that much. But I don't like how cavalier some folks within the White House are being about this. They're uh, like, there's some folks that are just giddy with the fact that there's war that they get to finally do. They're so happy that war is finally coming down the pike. And I like, no, we voted for peace. And Tony's been very, very cynical about Trump lately. And whether we like it or not, Trump's our only hope. We don't have to like it, but if Harris was in office and this happened, and oh, trust me, this would definitely happen under any Democrat, because they already know. If this would have happened under Harris, rather than, hey, maybe Trump can stop this, would be like, well, Harris is about to send basically both sides another $60 billion a piece. Because unfortunately, kind of like in keeping with what Guess Who Farted said, like on the Republican side, you've got a lot of people who are very, very much Israel firsters. And on the Democrat side, you've got folks who can't figure out if they're Israel first, Hamas first, or Mexico first. Okay. And that's the Democrats. So they can't even figure out where they're supposed to be at the moment. But they're certainly not representing the American voter. And unfortunately, on the Republican side, there's far too many of them as well, who I'm not sure who their constituency is, but it sure seems to not be their voters. Now, when people say, like, oh, yeah, but we got a couple of based ones like Massey. Okay. Massey's been in Congress since 2012. All right, Massey fans, name his accomplishments that don't involve things he said on Twitter. Exactly. That's my big problem with Massey is he's trying to get the reputation of Dr. No, but at the same time, it's not coming off the same way. It just isn't. See, Bandit goes, the pro-Israel, Israel first crowd are the same Republicans that slapped a Ukrainian flag on their truck just because they hate commies in Russia. Commies, even though that was 34 years ago. Yes, but I do think that Cold War psychology is still very much playing into what's happening now, Bandit, in that I think regardless of where the line ultimately is drawn in Ukraine, the the point is that there's going to be a wall somewhere that we have to play political hopscotch around for the next 40 years. Okay, like that's the point. Because as far as the Russians are concerned, that's the West being contained. Does that make sense? And I've been saying this since the day Russia invaded Ukraine, because it seemed just the most obvious psychology as to why they're doing this. And so far, my analysis is borne out. Now we'll see. Ultimately, the war's not over yet, so that will be borne out in its due time. Now, we're in this really messed up point in our politics where what's going to happen now is Beta goes, also there's a tie between the Israeli wars and the Cold War and World War II, to be frank, very heavily World War II. um hmm. But we're in this very messed up point in our politics where what's going to happen is each side is going to have its war that they think is just, and that they like the Democrats will be like, no, don't fund the Israel-Iran war, fund the Ukraine war. And the Republicans will be like, no, don't fund the Ukraine war, fund the Israel-Iran war. And meanwhile, folks, most of us are like, dudes, we voted for you to not do war. That was the whole point. That was why we hired you. And yet here we are. Here we are. So we have this very weird spot where the peaceniks don't really have any representative, and the last one we have is Trump. So it's literally a help us, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're our only hope kind of situation with Donald Trump. He's our only hope at this point. He's the closest thing we've had to a peacenik in the office in the history of our nation. And I say that with zero hyperbole. Name me an actual peacenik president. Name me one. Yeah. Can't do it, can you? It's so, yeah, we need Trump to hold that line. I really hope he doesn't get swayed by the military industrial complex, because it's so easy to do. It's so easy to get caught up in the pomp and the circumstance, and oh, sir, and think of the troops and think of all the, yeah. It's like a part of me thought about starting tonight's stream with the way that 300, the movie 300, its sequel, where it has Xerxes go out for glory, for honor, war, like that. You have to resist that. Okay, as a leader, you have to know when to resist that. The dogs of war always want to be let off the leash. They will always howl for any excuse to be let off the leash. You, as a leader, your job is to keep them on the leash. That's the whole job. And you need to know when to seek peace when your dogs of war and your generals are desperate for war. And you need to know when to, and this is the unfortunate reality of being a sovereign, you need to know when to push for war when everyone is crying peace. You need to know that difference. That is what makes a true blessing of a sovereign. If the sovereign that is before our nation knows truly when that time is, knows when there is a time for peace, knows when there is a time to fight, and knows that difference. That is one of the greatest blessings a kingdom can possibly have. That is one of the greatest blessings an empire can ever have befall it. And whether we like it or not, whether we want to admit it or not, we currently sit at the peak of the American empire. Okay, you and me and everybody within the sound of my voice that you have a phone or a computer to listen, you sit at the peak of the American empire. What I'm getting at is Israel was firmly seen as tied to the US, even though they had periods when they embraced communist policies. And if you look at the belligerents in the Yom Kippur War, etc., Israel's enemies in those wars got backing by the USSR. Ah, I see what you mean now. Yeah, so Israel and Russia have never been big friends, and Iran is basically sort of like Russia and China's gas tank, for lack of better terms. Like when they know they can't get no gas anywhere else, they know they can get some from Iran. And same with North Korea. Basically, anybody that doesn't want to play ball with the Western hegemony, that's how that one works. Okay, good to know. Good to know. Because we're going to go over here in a little bit my take on Israel Palestine about a year ago. This is shortly after the October 7th attack. And I'm curious to see how much of what I said is going to hold up over time. So that's something that I'm a little curious about. But folks, these are not good. This is not good news. Then I heard a loud voice from the temple telling the seven angels, "Go and pour out on the earth the seven bowls of the wrath of God." So the first angel went and poured out his bowl on the earth, and harmful and painful sores came upon the people who bore the mark of the beast and worshipped its image. The second angel poured out its bowl into the sea, and it became like the blood of a corpse, and every living thing died that was in the sea. The third angel poured out its bowl into the rivers and the springs of water, and they became blood. And I heard the angel in charge of the water say, "Just as you, O Holy One, who is and who was, for you brought these judgments, for they have shed the blood of the saints and prophets, and you have given them blood to drink. It is what they deserve." And I heard the altar saying, "Yes, Lord God the Almighty, true and just are your judgments." The fourth angel poured out his bowl on the sun, and it was allowed to scorch people with fire. They were scorched by the fierce heat, and they cursed the name of God who had power over these plagues. They did not repent and give him glory. The fifth angel poured out his bowl on the throne of the beast, and its kingdom was plunged into darkness. People gnawed their tongues in anguish and cursed the God of heaven for their pain and sores. They did not repent for their deeds. The sixth angel poured his bowl on the great river Euphrates, and its water was dried up to prepare the way for the kings from the east. And I saw coming out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet, three unclean spirits like frogs, for they are demonic spirits, performing signs, who go abroad to the kings of the world to assemble them for battle on the great day of God the Almighty. Behold, I am coming like a thief. Blessed is the one who stays awake, keeping his garments on, that he may not go about naked and be seen exposed. And they assembled them at the place that in Hebrew is called Armageddon. The seventh angel poured out his bowl into the air, and a loud voice came out of the temple from the throne saying, "It is done." And there were flashes of lightning, rumbling peals of thunder, and a great earthquake, such as there had never been seen since man was on the earth. So great was that earthquake. The great city was split into three parts, and the cities of the nations fell. And God remembered Babylon the Great to make her drain the cup of wine of the fury of his wrath. And every island fled away, and no mountains were to be found. And the great hailstones, about 100 pounds each, fell from heaven on people. And they cursed God for the plague of the hail, because the plague was so severe. Thus ends the reading of God's holy word. And the seas boiled and the skies fell. Yes. Now, I'm not saying that this is the end times, folks. Okay. There's a chance that this conflict can be resolved. But, folks, you always got to be worried whenever there's a new war that arises, because, like in Revelations 12, war was here before humanity ever was. War existed before humanity, and it merely waited for humanity to arrive to practice it. War existed before us. The dragon, Satan, the devil, he waged war against God, our creator. And Satan, as we know, is the king of this world. The Lord is the king of all, but Satan rules the world and the worldly. And so that's why war is the truest expression of the worldly. And so that's why we as Christians must always oppose war on principle, because it's literally the worst instincts and impulses of us allowed to run rampant on the soft hides of the innocent. And so that's why I believe that as a Christian, we should always seek peace, because Satan is the one who wages war. And he is the one who rejoices at this war. I tell you, folks, hell rejoices with every war that rings out. So keep that in mind and remember that when asked what you support.